Hi guys, welcome back to our 40-foot shipping container workshop build. We're almost ready to move in. We're so close. I know this place looks a little bit like a bomb went off right now, but I swear we are close. In this week's video, we're going to get started on the electrical. We're going to take a look at how we're going to be powering our 4x4 CNC, a mini split, and also a bunch of computers. And seeing as we basically have a finished shell now, we'll do a rundown of the cost so far. Spoiler alert, if you want the best bang for your buck, I don't think a shipping container workshop is going to be your best bet. This week's video is sponsored by Inverters. More about them a little bit later. This week is the Annapolis Boat Show, and despite having just spent 4 weeks building this glorious box here, I am mainly in DIY for the boat work. In fact, the whole reason for building this workshop is so I can continue making progress on our 44-foot hurricane damaged DIY catamaran project boat this winter when it gets too cold to work outside. I have a couple of days until I need to head up to Annapolis, so let's see if we can't make some progress here in the box. Let's head to the catamaran to pick up 2 multi-plus inverter chargers and some lithium iron phosphate batteries. We'll only have a 15 amp service where we're storing the shipping container until we find a piece of property, but that's perfectly fine because we can handle any peak loads with those inverter chargers. Here is one of those inverter chargers, and they're pretty freaking awesome. The biggest downside to them is that they're freakishly heavy. And also it appears we have a leak somewhere in the aft cabin. I don't think the inverter charger got wet, it's just the bottom of the cardboard. And here is the second multi-plus. We got these two because we knew we were going to be bringing the catamaran north, and we wanted to be able to run AC stuff while we were heading north. And while we didn't need 2 of them now, to be able to run them as a pair, they need to be the same hardware revision. So I figured we were better off getting 2 now, and that way we have them for the catamaran once the refit is done. A while back, Lead Time sponsored a video, and as a part of that, they sent us 2 5kWh batteries. While I wouldn't want to use these long-term on the boat for something like the shipping container, they should be perfectly fine. And, you would never guess it, they're also freakishly heavy. Back at our beautiful box, I decided I was better off getting the last bit of the OSB work out of the way so I could tidy up before getting started on the technical closet. All I needed to do was to add the little strip along the ceiling in the offices. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and I had just enough insulation left over to finish the job. Perfect! Small bonus, now we also know the answer to the question of how many screws does it take to build a container workshop. Apparently more than 898. I managed to locate a couple of lost screws off of the floor. Now I only had 1 screw for each of the little strip pieces in the workshop, but that's okay, they'll need to come back down again when we install the blocks for the CNC hoist. After a delightful bit of tidying up so I could actually move around inside of the workshop again, I cobbled together the rest of the little technical closet. It doesn't have to be fancy, and once the plywood is on there, you're never really gonna see the inside again. I basically just need somewhere to hide away the batteries and the inverter chargers where they're protected from dust and where they can get some of that nice cold air conditioning air from the office during the summers. Good morning, guys. It is a beautiful Monday morning. It's really nice and crisp outside. I'm about to head to the good lumberyard, the one with the ferry ride I showed you guys a few weeks back. We're going to pick up some Baltic birch for the technical closet and also just to have for upcoming projects. And on the way home, we're going to swing by Harbor Freight to pick up the toolbox and a few other bits and bobs. I've already taken you guys on this adventure once before to the good lumberyard with the ferry ride and everything, and while it is super nice, we've already done that, so instead of dragging you along for that, why don't I leave you in the capable hands of my almost identical twin brother to tell you about the sponsor of this week's video, Inverters. Unfortunately, using the internet in any way, shape or form means your personal information is scattered all over the place. And as data breaches become more and more common, your information is at risk. That's information like your name, your address, your phone number, your social security number, your email, just to name a few. Part of the problem is that data brokers will get their hands on your data and sell it for a profit. Through this process, your information can end up in the hands of all kinds of people. The sponsor of this week's video, Incogni, can help prevent this. There are many problems with your personal information floating around on the internet. For instance, in the US, there are specialized people search websites that will aggregate all the data they can find on every single person and make that available on the internet. They turn a profit by giving away your sensitive information, potentially to people with bad intentions. There are countless examples of how this can be annoying or downright harmful. For instance, huge loans have been taken out in people's names without them even knowing about it, or health insurance companies could actually raise your rates based on your online activities. Incogni can help. Incogni will reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request that your personal information be removed. All you need to do is to create an account, grant Incogni the right to work on your behalf, and then sit back and watch them do the work. In case you find your personal information in some obscure corner of the internet, you also have the option to submit custom website URLs through their custom removal feature, and Incogni will set to work removing that information too. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Use the code SAILLIFE or go to incogni.com/SAILLIFE to get 60% off the annual plan. Incogni also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there is no risk in trying it out. Thank you so much to Incogni for sponsoring this week's video. When I got back from my little adventure, I discovered a neat little unintentional feature about the shipping container. It works kind of like a little loading dock in combination with the tailgate on the truck. This is going to be super awesome for getting parts in and out of the workshop, as here demonstrated by unloading the toolbox. This thing was on sale at Harbor Freight, and that is kind of why I chose this one. It is nothing fancy, but I am sure it's going to be more than adequate for my needs. Assembly was quick and easy. There was just one handle and 4 wheels. Toolboxes seem to be less of a thing back in Denmark, at least when I left, but they are pretty neat and I'm very excited to have this thing. It is going to be perfect for organizing router bits, work holding doohickeys and CNC tools. The main purpose of my little excursion was to get plywood, specifically 3/4 inch Baltic birch that I can use to mount the inverter chargers. As previously mentioned, these inverter chargers are freakishly heavy. Given the hefty weight and also the somewhat confined area here, I figured it'd be easier to install them now before I put the side on the closet here. You might be wondering, but how are you going to get them out of there again? That is a problem for future Mads, and I'm sure he's going to figure something out. Now it seems like a... And see, that's the problem making YouTube videos. My little mic has a magnetic thingy, and now that's freaking attached to the inverter charger. One more. That looks pretty dang spiffy if you ask me. And then each of them just get a couple of screws at the bottom there to permanently mount them. That was, and pardon the pun here, the heavy lifting in terms of the electrical system. With these two Multiplus 5000s, we have a couple options when it comes to configuring them. We can either go with option A, which is 110 volts, where we get, I think it's 9,000 watts worth of continuous angry pixie delivery. Or we can go with option B, where we get split phase 240, but I don't really know if we need 240. And it's also something we can always change later on. Before we start running any wiring, which is going to be in conduit on the surface of the wall to make it easier to change and add stuff later on, we should probably paint the walls. Now Ava's office is going to have some kind of weird paneling stuff, fancy stuff, so we can't get started in there yet, but I'm going for the more rugged, manly version of walls where if you brush up against them, there's a good chance you're going to get a little splinter. So yeah, my office is ready for paint. I had some small gaps along the edges and I figured it might look better if I filled those with a paintable caulk. We'll see if this turns out to be a good decision or if they're just gonna open up over time. As you can see here in the background through the door, the sun was setting and that means the mosquitoes are coming out. I don't know if it was the light in the room or the smell of the paint or something like that, but they were extra friendly that night. After having applied 2 coats of white, I returned the next morning and did my very best to clean up the OSB. There's a bunch of these little floppy bits that are not really adhered to the rest. It seemed like a good idea to remove those before painting. I taped off the ceiling, and because OSB is so rough of a surface, I smeared a thin layer of that paintable caulk over the seam in the hopes of the gray not wicking up under the tape. And just like that, we're done painting my little dungeon. Of course, there are going to be some acoustic panels on the walls and the ceiling to make it a nicer place to shoot voiceover. There's going to be my little office desk with the giant computer monitor and stuff. But yeah, it's coming along. I think it's going to be the nicest office I've ever had. For the color of the walls, I went with a pretty close match to the color that's called Tailor Gray 2, which is this one right here. This one was called Sirius Gray. The reason for that particular gray color, well, there are multiple reasons, but one of the big reasons was the fact that my friend Duca over at Oddlife Crafting used a gray color very similar to that one in their workshop. They recently finished a really nice workshop build and are getting back into boat building after having gone through just a heck of a process of logistical nightmares and stuff. But yeah, they have a similar gray color in their workshop, and I figured it'd be kind of nice to have at least sort of matching workshops. So yeah, I'll include a link for Oddlife Crafting down in the description. On a little side note, finding colors in the US based on European colors proved to be a little bit difficult. But I found this website here. Let me just pick the color and then I can show you. As you can see, I've input the RGB code for the color I wanted up here. You can choose different types of color codes if you have a different format, but then it'll output the closest matches based on colors you can actually buy here in the US. So for instance, this is the one we went with, the Sirius Gray, and as you can see, it's a fairly close match to what I wanted. So if you're in a similar boat and you ever need to go between a European color code, in Denmark we call them RAL. I don't know if they're RAL or ARL in the UK, something like that. But if you ever need to go from a color code like that and you can get the RGB value, then you can use this website to figure out which name, color, paint you can go with here in the US that's going to be a close match. And that website was called easyrgb.com. I started out this video by saying that I don't think a container workshop is necessarily the best value for money if you're building a workshop or an office, something like that. So let's do a quick rundown on the cost of what it's cost so far to build the shell. Spoiler alert, it is much monies. First off, we have the shipping container itself. We went for a 40-foot single-use high cube shipping container. We could have gotten one that was a little bit cheaper if we hadn't gone for a single-use one, but there you can have issues with the doors not opening, them potentially being a little bit leaky and really banged up. So this thing was $5,000, including shipping. The very first thing I did was to install the 2 windows. We could have saved a little bit of money here if I had made the frame myself and welded it to the shipping container, but we chose to go with the kits from Container Modification World just to make the process a little bit quicker and easier. Those two window kits set us back $1,400. The biggest problem with a shipping container is that its default setting is condensation nightmare / easy bake oven that wants to roast you alive. So to make the space usable and comfortable, you need to insulate. I chose to use spray foam in the entirety of the shipping container and then added rock wool in the office section. The spray foam was around $3,500 and then the rock wool was a little under $600. To be able to hang heavy stuff on the walls, well, we kind of need some walls. And I knew I was going to build the CNC hoist also, so we were kind of locked into traditional framing and then just covering it with the cheapest possible option we could find, which was OSB. 40 sheets of OSB, 72 10-foot 2x4s, and 15 8-foot 10x4s, as well as the framing brackets from Container Modification World. That combined was $1,550. On a quick little installation side note, I've seen a couple of comments mentioning the InsoFast product, which are these shaped panels that you kind of adhere in place to the side of the shipping container to insulate them. If we'd gone that route, it would have been about $1,000 more expensive than the spray foam. I also believe it's a more labor-intensive process, at least from the videos I've seen on YouTube. It seems like it's a lot of work to adhere those panels in place, especially the overhead ones. If we had gone that route, we might have been able to save a little bit on the framing, because I believe you can secure plywood, drywall, or OSB directly to the InsoFast panels. But personally, I don't think it's the perfect option for everyone. Having said that, there is nothing better than a real-world experiment. So when we get the second shipping container, which is primarily going to be used for storage, meaning we won't have to hang like super heavy stuff on the walls, for that one I am absolutely up for using the InsoFast panels. I think it'll be an interesting experiment. Just in case you're curious why we need a second shipping container, that's because the plan is to get, well, 2 shipping containers, space them apart, shove the catamaran in between them, and then put some kind of roof over it. So to sum up, we have spent $13,250 on a somewhat awkwardly shaped, very square box. For that amount of money, I feel like we could have built a much bigger stick frame workshop. That's why I said I don't think that a container workshop is necessarily the best bang for your buck. That's not the same as to say that it was a bad idea for us, because, well, first off, we don't have any property, at least not yet, so we don't have anywhere to build a stick frame workshop. And also, I needed something relatively quickly so that I can continue making progress on the catamaran refit once it gets too cold outside this winter. Add to that the fact that once we find property, we can easily move this container to there and get the second container and build this shelter contraption here, which I think is going to be a good idea because it's relatively DIY friendly, and also it's not a permanent structure, so I don't think there are any permits required, stuff like that. So I think it's going to be the path of least resistance to building something to put over the catamaran. I was hoping that I could get to put up lights and at least get started on the wiring in this week's video, but we better let this paint dry before I start doing anything drastic. I leave for the boat show tomorrow morning. I'm excited to go there because I'll get to see a lot of friends again. I get to hang out with Andy from Boatworks Today and John from Living for Sale, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But there is one little thing, and that's the fact that our new CNC is arriving the day after tomorrow. So I really also want to be here at the same time to get that up and running, because I am super excited about that. I have been wanting to have my own CNC for basically as long as I can remember, right? I'm a software geek and also a bit of a hardware geek, and when you combine the two, well, that's a CNC right there. So that is going to be so freaking exciting. Also in the category of exciting news, and I should probably have mentioned this before the CNC, but Ava will be back with her loving husband, namely this guy, in next week's video. She's going to be here for a couple of weeks, then she'll jet off to Winnipeg for a little bit, but then she'll be back, and I think she might be here permanently by then. So fingers crossed for that. And on that uplifting note, and also because it's just started pouring down and I think I might have left the hatch open aboard Athena, I am going to end this week's video here. I'll see all of you guys back here inside of the box next week for yet more Oh Glorious DIY. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you! And thank you so much to Incogni for sponsoring this week's video!